himself told us what our position was apart from him in John 8:34. Jesus says, he answered them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin." Everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. This is our identity without Christ. Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, or any other personality test will not tell you this. But that is who you are apart from Christ. You are a slave to sin. And the problem with this is that our sin nature, the slavery that we have to sin, is foundational to our lives. It changes how we view life. It changes how we relate to each other. And it changes how we relate to God. And you understand that's why our identity in Christ is so important. We struggle with the world. We struggle with each other. We struggle with God. There's been a lot of people, famous people, or especially in the Christian music industry, that have gone through what's called Reconstruction. They're struggling with what they've believed. And they've taken on the things of the world, and now they are no longer believers, which makes you wonder if they are ever believers to begin with. For Israel, being prisoners of sin was so complicated because now they had the law. It was different than it was for other nations. It was even more complex. Due to their slavery to sin, the law brought a curse instead of a blessing. I mean, you would think that it would have been a blessing, right? So now we know what our limits are. So it's a blessing. Speed limit is 55. I know if I go 65 and I lose control of my car, I'm going to kill somebody or kill myself. That's a blessing to know that I can, if I stay at 55 and I stay on my side of the road, and now they got the rumble strips, which really should keep me on my side of the road. It's a blessing, but the law is not a blessing. It becomes a curse because it shows their sin. It shows that they can't do it. It shows that they are far from the blessings of God. The law was a guardian. It was not a liberator. They had just been liberated from slavery in Egypt, but that did not liberate them from sin. And the law did not liberate them from sin, as it doesn't do today. And the law is a very unforgiving jailer, because it exposes our sin, and then it fails to give us a solution. So what's the solution? So since it says, thou shalt not steal. Okay, what's the solution to that? In the law. It's not there. Now, we know what the solution is. The solution is Christ. The solution is turning to Christ and living a life in Christ. That's the solution to the sin that the law brings out. But the law gives us no solutions. But we also have to remember that the law was not permanent. It was put in place until salvation would come through Jesus Christ. The law served as a constant reminder to Israel and the nation that they were apart from God's inheritance. Because remember, Abraham believed God, and it was credited him as righteousness. And those who believe like Abraham will get his inheritance, the blessing, which is Christ. They weren't getting it because they were going by the law. If we do not have faith in Jesus Christ for our salvation, then our identity and the kind of life we are experiencing will be a life of slavery. That's the problem with these personality tests. That's the problem with the Enneagram. Be honest with you. If you talk to anybody who's been in it and used it and they gotten away from it, they're like, it was everything to me. It enfolded me. It defined everything, how I dealt with everybody. And I found out it was separating me from people. The more I found out about my Enneagram numbers, the more I knew that the other Enneagram numbers couldn't relate to me. And it puts you on a pedestal. It's a me. It's all about me. Me, me, me. Jesus says, no, it's about me. It's about Christ. Apart from Jesus, we are held captive and imprisoned, and we are denied access to God's glorious inheritance. And we will remain that through eternity if we don't turn to Christ. We will remain imprisoned in our sin. But this is not how God intended it. We know from the beginning He intended it to be different than it is. The great turning point in human history, the dawning of faith and the coming of Jesus Christ in human flesh to die for the lost, that was the pivotal point in all of history. It changed everything. The law no longer mattered. It no longer was our guardian. Now we had faith in Christ. It was the answer to all the problems that the law showed. It was the answer to everything. Just as for the American Revolution, the Battle of Saratoga was the pivotal point, because it was that point when the American army won that the French came in and supplied us. That was the turning point of the war. For you and me, the turning point of our war with sin is Jesus Christ, when He came and died and rose again. When we turn to Christ and we put our faith in Him, we are no longer under the law's guardianship. The law can no longer condemn us, and it can no longer imprison us. It no longer has any power over us. Sin is done. You're like, whoa, wait a minute, Pastor, I struggle with sin. Yeah, you want to know why you struggle with sin? Because you keep going for it. You keep grabbing it. You keep falling for it. You keep doing those things because that's what you like to do in your sin nature. You have not put it to death.